Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Let's Chat episode 5. Today is quite a special day. I got to start off this Let's Chat series with a cousin of mine from the UK. Today, I get to speak to someone I consider a brother, Raj Maharaj, and we're going to be chatting about COVID and work in the time of COVID. And I'm really looking forward to having these conversations. When he was here in South Africa, we had these amazing conversations. Unfortunately, now that he's in Mauritius, we don't have them face to face, but we do get to have these conversations online. I'm going to hand over to Suraj, Raj, to tell you more about who he is, a little bit about his background. And Raj, thank you so much for doing this. It's such a pleasure having you online. You and I have such fun conversations. I'm really looking forward to this one as well, and adding value to those that have joined us, especially on how to deal with the difficult times that they're facing during COVID-19 and all of the lockdowns. So over to you.
Thanks, Jayesh. Thanks a lot. Sure. Where do I start? I'm as old as the trees, so I have to really look back. I started my career in the South African Navy, spent 15 great years there, left, joined the Suraj Group, worked there for a while since the advent of 9/11, and that was my first big crisis that I had to deal with. And survive. And I think you talked to one of your subjects, your TED talk, where you said, your job doesn't necessarily define you. I found myself retrenched, and I had to make a plan. Fortunately, I joined a company called EDS. It was an American company, and I understudied the HR director. Didn't quite enjoy that job as much. Because, as you know, I love autonomy, and I didn't have autonomy in that job. So from there, I was headhunted to a company called Advtech. Advtech deals with, or is primarily in the private education business, but I was fortunate to first be the HR manager, the group HR manager, and then become MD for 3 of their brands in the recruitment space. I did that for 12 odd years, 3 years as an HR manager and 12 years as an MD. And then the opportunity in Bourbon came along, and it was quite amazing because I had a colleague call me and said, look, I have this opportunity. It's in Mauritius, and would you like to consider it? And, I've been talking about going to an island for years. And initially, it was a step down because I was a director of 3 companies, and I led an association of recruiters in South Africa. But I thought, here's a time to go take something that is relaxing, and I can hear my staff laughing now. And, just take it by ear. So I packed a suitcase, and I left. And 2 years later, I'm still in Mauritius. And we've gone through 2 major crises. One was the sinking of one of our ships, the Bourbon Road. That was a huge tragedy for Bourbon. And the other is this pandemic. So thanks for dealing with the crises. And I decided to actually write about it and written a series of articles over the last few weeks. I can't hear
so for those, yes. So for those of you that have joined us, I'm speaking to Raj Maharaj on work in the time of COVID-19. Please feel free, as always, to use the chat function if you need any specific details from Raj or myself, and we'll be happy to address those. So Raj, you wrote an article, and it was a play on love in the time of cholera. So this is quite interesting for me because, we're often joking about this, and COVID and cholera both start with the letter C, and I've seen lots of memes on this as well. So, love in the time of cholera, I know, we've had a niece who's had to cancel her wedding as an example. We've had individuals who've had to celebrate many milestones, anniversaries, and birthdays during lockdown. But more important, work has gone on without many of us going into the traditional environments that we used to. So tell me a little bit more about this article that you've written. And for those of you that are interested, I will be sending the article to everyone that registered for this webinar. And you can find it on Roger's LinkedIn page as well. So Suraj, tell me about this article that you've written.
All right. This is the third in a series of articles that I've written, and it comprises of 4 articles. So there's one more to come about dealing with crises. As I was saying to you earlier on, there's always a before, during, and after of any crisis. And I've basically written an article called "The Black Swan," which you've read, and that was essentially planning for an event. It doesn't matter what event it is, any event that could risk or jeopardize your business or business continuity or the health and safety of your staff. That was followed up by an internal article. I didn't publish that because the content was widely published by quite a number of authors. And that is, what do you do when you are now at home? How do you work at home? What do you consider? How do you look after your family? Because this pandemic touches everyone. So what I did was I sent this internally to my staff. As a guideline on how to survive this pandemic from a work aspect and also from a personal family aspect. Then I moved on to, so what's next? And obviously next is going back to work. And it's quite frightening for a lot of individuals because of how unknown the characteristics of this pandemic is. No one quite knows the extent to which it can infect and affect an individual. So as leaders, we have to tread very carefully and obviously communicate clearly to our employees, to our staff, to our colleagues on where we are going. And obviously assuring them that we are doing it responsibly and safely.
So, Suraj, you touch on quite a few important, areas in your article, and one of them was around employee well-being. And I'd really like us to touch on, the psyche of individuals. This whole thing you talk about loneliness and diminished sense of value. And I talk about this in my TED Talk as well, where people lose themselves to their jobs, right? They become so closely linked to a job title, getting up, getting dressed, showing up, and everything that comes with having a job. And that becomes part of who they are. So how do they deal with these situations?
I think it's difficult because the one thing that I think we should be very careful of is the balance. Apart from the social interaction and the loneliness that comes from not interacting with your colleagues, there is an aspect where you tend to work yourself very hard. When one goes to the physical workplace, there's a structure, there's a time, and you tend to go home and you know when you're going to relax. Whilst you're at home, there's a different aspect to it in that the timelines are blurred, the structure is blurred. So you tend to work a lot longer, a lot harder, and there is a very real possibility of burnout. So I think that's the one aspect that I am very aware of and try to bring balance. So, you take your regular breaks, you structure your day, you try to work from time to time, although it doesn't really work for me. because I tend to call my staff and my staff call me, I think all parts of the day and night. We run a global business that doesn't really run on a 12-hour or 8-hour clock. So before coming into this work from home situation or pandemic situation, we already had irregular hours. But in the pandemic situation, it becomes even more so, in that you have to really manage the social aspect of your work.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you could burn out.
So on that point, I mean, there must be something called lockdown etiquette, right? I find we've almost blurred the lines now in terms of the world of work and then family life. Because I've been getting calls from entrepreneurs at 7 o'clock in the evening on a Saturday morning. It's either we've forgotten that the days of the week, or we've just forgotten that there should be some kind of balance. And this really worries me because, especially as entrepreneurs, we used to working, till whatever hour. But I've noticed during this lockdown period, even individuals from a corporate are calling at very strange hours and expecting information at very strange hours. So, how do we deal with this new norm? And do you think it's going to find its way into the workplace after lockdown?
I think, like with everything, this is new. It's the new normal. So the rules are still being written, the rules are still being established. And I think in time, if the new norm becomes routine, then we will have regulations, we will have policies, we will have procedures in terms of how one should work. And you'd find the behavioralists, the consultants will start putting a material into the workplace that will regulate how we behave and how we work. But I think as leaders, we need to be respectful of our staff and understand what their family unit is like. Let me explain. I think as one gets older, as your kids leave the nest, you tend to have more time. So your work-life balance is very different to somebody that's younger, that's starting a family, that has other responsibilities. So I think as leaders, one needs to be aware of that. And you need to plan accordingly. You need to put your foot into the water or your toe into the water, test exactly what the working situation is like, how people react, and then work accordingly. I don't think there's a fixed way of working. So as leaders, one needs to understand who your people are. You need to understand what their work etiquette is like, and you need to work accordingly. Because I tend to work throughout the day through different hours. I don't really regulate a lunchtime or a tea break. I tend to work until a certain piece of work is finished, and then I go on. And I think for my immediate managers, that is my expectation. But happily, they tend to have the same work ethic as well. They work hard. They are responsive. They they deliver quickly, and that ties in to the modern technological world that we live in, and I think I'm very lucky to have a group of leaders who lead the rest of my organization and have the work ethic that I expect.
So, I'm an entrepreneur, so I get to write my own schedule every day. But I can just imagine if I was still in corporate, how challenging it would be for me because in corporate, we spend almost 80 to 90% of our time in meetings. And I've been chatting to a few of my colleagues or ex-colleagues and clients. And this is the strange reality that they are now sitting in more meetings via online meetings because you don't have to drive between meetings. So you don't even have to take that gap. So they're ending up having close to 9 or 10 meetings a day. And these are our meetings. And that's crazy because after 2 or 3 hours of meetings, I'm already tired. So, can we actually be productive even online during these online meetings? Is there productivity that's happening? Because I know this was always the argument in the traditional work office. When you attend meetings, you can't actually get the work done because you're sitting in meetings. So how can it be productive, sitting in back-to-back meetings during these times? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Look, I believe an individual can only be productive for 3 to 4 hours in the day. Uh, and understanding that, I think I hate meetings. I hate long meetings. So in this time of COVID, I have one meeting with my staff in a week. I delegate the work. We understand what needs to be done. We discuss what needs to be done, and they go ahead. And then I pick up with them from time to time on the telephone or via digital conferencing to understand better what we need to do to clarify points, and we go on. And like I said earlier on, I think I'm lucky in that I have managers that are independent, can work on their own, and are not afraid to challenge. And as a result of that, we tend to not have that many meetings. But you're right. As a culture, I think almost all companies have too many meetings. And during COVID-19, more so, I think because the control factor comes in. One needs to understand, is the work being done? Can I rely on my staff to deliver accordingly? So I think there are some employees and staff that needs to be managed. Others, if you know that they have autonomy, they are disciplined, they tend to work. And coming back, and I wanted to say this initially, my ethos as a leader is to find the right people and then get out of the way. Uh, and it's worked for me over the organizations that I work for, because I think I very deliberately gathered the people around me. And if I did not find the people that matched the way I worked, then over time we shaped each other to actually meet the goals of the organizations and each other. And I think I uh, I did not have an opportunity to recruit a team when I came to Mauritius. The team was already in place, but I was fortunate in that it was, like I've said before, quite a disciplined and forward-thinking team.
Absolutely. So I always believe, Suraj, that you've got to, if you're a good leader, you surround yourself by people that are much smarter than you are. I know I've always done that, because that's the way good leaders lead, by surrounding themselves by really smart people, but giving them the autonomy to do what needs to be done. I see we've got some really great questions on our chat line, so I'm going to go on to there, and you're welcome to read them as well, Suraj. The first is from Mongezi Mtati, and he says, with this being the new normal and many small businesses need to pitch work now for projects later down the road, how receptive is corporate, big business, and stakeholders around projects being pitched in this time? I'll respond to that as well, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, I think if I can liken firstly uh, a corporate or a business to a human being, I think we are going through a time that's very challenging. We are unsure of what tomorrow will bring. We know that because of the lockdown, for some of us that are entrepreneurs, our pockets are actually drying out. And whilst we are desperate to pitch work and to have work when lockdown ceases, I think corporates are thinking about, my word, how am I going to balance the books? What is my cost efficiency is going to be like? Will I be able to keep all of my staff, complete all of my projects that I had planned for 2020. So I think it's going to be very, very difficult for entrepreneurs and businesses to get into corporates. But my advice is understand your partner, understand your business partner, understand where the needs are, and pitch accordingly. And nothing beats picking up the telephone and talking to the person on the other end of the line. And I think if you can show understanding, if you can show empathy, and you're willing to give before you get, I think corporates will actually treat you accordingly. That's my advice.
I couldn't agree more with some of what you said. And in addition to that, I mean, recently we were engaging with a group of entrepreneurs on one of our property accelerators. And one of the pieces of advice we gave them was no one's doing the work that they would have been doing during this time. So it's not like there's a competitor taking away work from them. The work will still be there, but the appetite for completing that work or giving an entrepreneur an opportunity to deliver on that work may have changed, like Raj said. The other thing that we found recently is if you can tailor your projects or your products to suit a specific need right now to address some of the challenges that companies are facing with COVID-19, you stand a much better chance of being considered for those projects. I mean, we've just put about 8 entrepreneurs in front of a major banking client that's looking for specific COVID-19 related support. You know, everything from stickers on floors to technology that can help with social distancing. So it all depends on what your business does and what the company is looking for. And that will never change. But the financial constraints is something to consider during this period. The other question we have, Raj, is from Nirasha, and she's asking, people are unable to switch off. They feel keeping busy in work, sorry, it just moved away, is a great distraction to mask the reality. Burnout becomes real. So, Suraj, what is your advice to other leaders in the workplace to trust and not micromanage? You have touched on this a bit, Raj, but you're welcome to add to that.
Yeah, I think I've covered this point ad nauseum, but I would say that one needs to understand that this is trying times, and one needs to put themselves, I'm talking about leaders, in the shoes of their employees, and have the one-on-ones, understand where they are, and dish out the work accordingly. Um, I think I think we will, whatever the new normal is, we will soon get through that new normal, and that will become a routine, and we'll find our feet. Uh, I think about parents who are worried about their children missing out on the school terms and education, and wondering where the kids will end up. And I think if you've shown the necessary love, if you've shown the necessary discipline, if your kids understand where they are at, they'll find their way. And it's the same with work. Uh, the work, like you said, will always be there. It might be in a minimized, a much more minimized form, but the work will be there. And I think if you are disciplined, if you are dedicated, if you have the right attitude, you will land on your feet.
So you're going to love the next question, Raj. It comes from the beautiful Sana Maharaj. And she asks, how would you balance your focus between daily business as usual tasks versus attending meetings when your daily tasks require 100% of your focus during work hours in order to reach your quarterly to annual goals in your position?
Yeah, like I said, leaders need to be understanding. In my case, I have one structured meeting in a week. I plan what's needed to be done for that week and the following week, and you follow up on that individually. So you don't take up the time or valuable time in meetings that could be taken up doing the work.
Okay, thank you for that. Sabelo, I see you have sent through a question on the Q&A line. I have addressed that question, but if you need more clarity, just ask and I'll be happy to respond. So Raj, I wanted to just touch on for a few minutes the the future work environment. I mean, your past background has been in recruitment. Things are changing. You said, you've got a series of articles coming up. The next one will focus on what's next. Things have changed dramatically in terms of how we think about staff, how we think about them needing to be in the office when they actually don't. So can you touch on what do you think are going to be the trends from a recruitment perspective and opportunities that could come with some of these new trends?
The first is the easiest and comes to mind the quickest, which is working from home. I think we have found in the last 2 to 3 months that unlike in the 1800s when the Dutch East India Company first erected these huge buildings to show how successful they are, and that's essentially what offices are about. And if you look at edifices, I think I read it in an article, I can't remember what article it was. They talk about architects building now office spaces as opposed to homes. And if you look at the buildings in London and all over the world, these are just huge office spaces. And I think, although I don't think that we will totally go away from our structured normal offices, I think businesses are now thinking along cost lines. And is it more efficient to allow my staff to work from home or pay the rent, pay the telephone, pay the electricity? I'm not saying that those costs won't exist, but they'll exist in a smaller margin if you work from home. So those are the considerations. So one is working from home. Two is, I think, the entire supply chain. One has to rethink about. Uh, I mean, I think about the water at work. I think about the coffee at work. I think about the plants at work, and I think about everything else. And will they exist when we go back uh, to work, or will we reconsider how those services are being rendered and whether those services are important enough or essential enough for us to continue? So suppliers and how we treat suppliers is another area that I think is going to change. Um, I don't want to give away too much because my article is going
That's
to
fine. We look
yeah.
forward to seeing it, and I'll be sure to share it on our social media channels as well. And before we wrap up, I was chatting to a group of entrepreneurs yesterday on just one of our catch-ups. And it became clear that in moments of desperation, many individuals are starting to look at changing their paths, either to go back into a corporate role or to go back into a consulting role. And the reality is there may not be that many corporate roles to go back into because of the crisis we're facing. But on the other hand, companies have realized that they don't have to employ from their geographic location. They can now employ people from around the world because they've seen remote working actually works. They were forced to do it, it works. So then it opens up additional opportunities for individuals to look outside of just their country, their province, and I think this will create a lot more opportunities for individuals going forward. But Raj, thank you so much for joining me today and chatting about this very important topic. I'm going to encourage all of you to check out Raj's LinkedIn page and connect with him so you can access more of the articles. But I'd love to hear some of your closing thoughts, and I'll go back to chat line. There are no more questions, Raj. So if I can have your closing thoughts or words of encouragement to those individuals that have joined us, and we'll then be able to release everyone.
I want to talk about this pandemic. I think a lot of us are uncertain. Like I've said initially, a lot of us are scared. But I think that our bodies are stronger than we give it credit for. And I think in time, because how long can one remain in lockdown? And I think once we clear the infection, it's going to come in with the next plane load of people. So we're going to infect, reinfect, and keep infecting people. So I think governments will realize in time that they cannot have this lockdown or unnatural situation that we are living in at the moment. And I think borders are going to slowly open up, and people are going to have to go out into the world. You are going to get infected. Um, some of us, unfortunately, are going to get very sick, and some might pass on. But I think that's the nature of what we have at the moment. We need to take the next necessary precautions. But I think as our bodies are such wonderful things that as soon as you build up an immunity, then it becomes like the cold or the flu. So I just wanted to leave with that thought that I don't think we can keep this virus at bay forever. I think at some time it's going to reach into our homes, into our lives, and affect our loved ones if it hasn't already. And I think we have to be brave, and we have to face this new frontier. So.
Well, thank you so much for that, Raj. Adrian Passat says to say hi to you. If there's anyone that would like to say hi online, please feel free to put your hand up and I'll unmute you, or you can unmute. You're welcome to say hi to Raj, the other end of
Hi,
the
Adrian.
ocean. Okay, so Balveer, you're online.
Hi, Balveer.
I have unmuted you.
I think he's still muted on, yeah.
Yeah, no, he's,
No.
Balveer, you can go ahead. Okay, I think he might be having some technical problems, but Balveer, you are unmuted when you're ready. Does anyone else that wants to ask Raj a question using voice or... Okay, Emily says, hi Raj, thank you for sharing the knowledge. You're welcome, Emily, and lovely having you on the chat again. Okay, Raj, with that said, I'm going to say goodbye to you. It was lovely seeing you again. I can't wait to see you guys in person, hopefully in the next few weeks. If anyone on this chat knows how to get Raj and Marlene from Mauritius to South Africa on a private plane or a yacht or something, let us know as well. I'm keen to get them back here. Have a lovely afternoon further, and we look forward to hearing more from you.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye.